Go. Okay, let's get started. Okay, give me your good news on FSD. Why don't we start with that?
Well, I have the latest update for my Hardware 3 car, which is like ancient, right? Not supposed to work, but it's pretty good. I've really been enjoying it, and it's kind of driving me to and from work. I have to tell you that version 9 also did that before they messed it up. But yeah, it's usable. I even let my kid, who's a new driver, use it once, and it drove them home into the driveway. And it does this cool thing, and I don't know if I'm crazy or not. I hate to sound like the Tesla fans who like to insert things that the tech is doing that it can't actually do. But I've noticed a few times when it's sitting, it stops for a red light. And if it's first, it sits there, it doesn't do anything. And then pretty close to when the light changes, it starts to like creep up a little bit, like kind of like like people would do. And I'm like, does it know that the light's about to change? I know, at least I see you laughing. I sound crazy, I understand, but this has happened to me more than once, and I'm wondering if it somehow is just getting ready to go. I've never had that behavior. Laughing. I sound crazy, I understand, but this has happened to me more than once, and I'm wondering if it somehow is just getting ready to go. I've never had that behavior before. This is a marked upgrade from earlier versions, which used to stop for green lights. So like, it's way better. But I don't know, it's weird. I hate to be like, I don't want to be the designated defender of FSD today, but I am very impressed with the latest version, and it's definitely an upgrade over the previous version that I had. But that's all I'll say.
Okay, that's great. The question is, would you put your kid in the back
N
seat?
Like, unsupervised, I wouldn't have this thing for a second unsupervised, no. 0 per it is so far from a
Yeah.
robotaxi, and it still makes mistakes, but it is a marked improvement, and I have very low expectations with, I feel like Hardware 3 is sunsetted, like, it's not happening, right? It's not gonna be unsupervised where credit is due.
Lines in the DMs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I was seeing the pretty atrocious numbers out of, I think it was Germany for January and spilling into February. And looking at Tesla fans defending it by saying there were some lines down, and that explains the poor sales. And one, I don't know if that's fully true because clearly there's some brand damage in Europe. But also, if that's true, if they really did shut down some lines to change some things and it led to like 75% sales drops for a month or two, like that's really poor planning. Like they really like what happened? Does that never happen? Does that happen to any other car company where it's like, we're gonna upgrade something, so we're gonna cut our sales by like 75%. Like that seems like even your excuse of like, well, don't worry, they just fumbled like how they're changing things doesn't make me feel very good about it, but maybe that is the case. At the same time, I also sent you that graphic about, boy, I was not aware of how the Chinese auto industry has just exploded. I mean, they're the amount of cars that they are exporting is it's massive. Um, and I've been seeing a lot of these influencers reviewing Chinese cars, and they do look pretty cool. I don't know what it means for like reliability and everything else, but they're very interesting. And I just wonder if China will potentially eat Tesla's lunch, especially if we have a bunch of tariffs and stuff going on around the world, if places will just embrace Chinese cars. Like somewhere I could see that would be Canada, where they're like, screw this, we're done. We don't want to bother with the tariffs from the United States. We'll just bring in some of these Chinese cars. And I don't know, maybe that won't happen, but it just makes me wonder, as I am like literally the worst bull at this case. Like I still have my stock, and I honestly, I told you this last time, I do not have a very good bull case that doesn't involve like magical robots and robo
Yeah. Why
taxis.
why are you still holding this
I
stock?
don't
That's
know.
what I
I
don't
don't.
understand.
I'm here. I don't know. I'm sentimental. And I'm going on my 10th year of holding, so I feel like I'm just stuck. So
Earl, I'm going to piggyback on you real quick. What's up, Yaman and Marco? Listen, so I've been down to South America numerous of times already, and I have the opportunity to see BYD cars and actually sit in them and actually drive them and been driven in them. I will say this, and I don't not a person to I don't know the future. I have no idea. But I will say this: if there is an argument or something that spikes up with Trump and Elon, and freaking Trump just gets super petty and lets Chinese cars in America, it's a wrap for Tesla. It is 100% wrap for them. And
Okay,
I'm not trying, and I'm
Jay.
not trying, and I'm not trying to be. I'm not.
Sorry, Jay. I didn't. You have to raise your hand and ask for permission to speak in this space. I don't know how. Like other spaces have other rules, but that's the rule today. So in this space, and also first-time speakers are required to ask questions only. Kenrick, what's your question?
I didn't actually have a question. I would just wanted to make a comment about um, the price of Tesla. I made a call that it would go down to 255 when we were in like 330, and that was just off of the stock where it is, where the buy points and sell points are, um, and the market will always move if they can down to whatever those periods of support are, and we're just moving down. Um, I don't think we'll start moving up again until there's good news.
Okay, Kendrick, thank you. Earl, do you see a potential war because of tariff wars? Do you think tariff wars can lead to an actual war, a global war?
No, I think
Why not? Can you?
this is
Yeah,
just a
can you?
bunch of dick waving. Yeah, it's really
So
just
why do you say no? I mean, I did, you mentioned the surge in Chinese exports. That is a very real threat to the economies of in Europe and US. Why do you say that couldn't lead step up to a military war?
I mean, I guess it could, but I feel like it's a lot of bluster, and we've kind of been here before, and you can even see with the so far, even in the short amount of time that Trump has been in office, he will back down from things as needed. So once the shit hits the fan, I don't see it escalating like that. Would be my
Well,
guess, but yeah, of course it's possible,
okay,
and
so
I think
technically it's possible you don't see it, but at the same time, I just don't know if Trump will actually back down because I mean yesterday I think the commerce guy Lutnick or whatever his name is kind of let it slip that they're working on a deal and that they're going to announce a deal today or whatever. But
mhm,
at the same time, Trump wants to reduce tax rates. He wants to eliminate income taxes
mhm,
and he has to raise money somehow for that. So tariffs
mhm,
would add hundreds of billions of dollars to the plus side of the equation, doesn't it? Wouldn't it?
mhm. Yeah, I mean, um, I think that tariffs will quickly be fairly unpopular, and I think if it's a drag on the economy, he's gonna have to pick um, what he's gonna do about that. But yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I have no idea, but my gut feeling is that I don't think it'll continue to escalate. He likes to bluster and cause damage and then brag about making a deal, sometimes back to exactly where we started. So it's a lot of theater, and I assume most of this will end like that. But um, we'll see. I think you don't want to mess around with this too much because I do think that places that import from the United States, if there's a crazy tariff war, and if you're looking at China with cool electric cars or whatever they have, and no tariffs, that I think people will just start buying that stuff, and that will put a huge dent in our economy. And I don't think anybody would support that long term. So I think he'll make a deal, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
I think so. I agree with you. I don't think, but I don't think he's going to make a deal before. I mean, actually, I don't know. I don't know. I can't say. I don't know what I don't know. I can't. I don't think I know what I don't know. which, by the way, is actually the actual Socrates quote is I don't hold on. I don't think, I don't know, and I don't think I know what I don't know. Instead of all I know is nothing. I don't think that's the actual translation, apparently, because that like those are very different meanings. Anyway, I was researching this yesterday. Ancient Greek, fun times. Lucia, how are you?
All good, Yaman. Thank you. I just wanted to say that, in my opinion, tariffs might actually induce an increase of aggressivity by China in the Pacific, and that could escalate if there is a wrong move from any party. But I don't think that they will start a direct conflict. I think the chances are low, but an increase in aggressivity is possible.
Why do you say chances are low? Can you kind of like say a couple of things, couple reasons why you think the chances of an actual war is low?
Yes, because the problem of China is that the naval fleet is not strong enough to actually beat the American one, and there is an long effort from China to improve its military. So I think that when China is confident in the military power, in its military power, then the chances will increase dramatically. But for now, I don't think they are ready.
Okay, thank you, Lucia. All right. We're gonna do some news. Earl, is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I think your graph about and I'll repost this so you all can see it too. I think everybody knows the China's exports surging already. So this isn't news to anybody, at least in this space. But and I don't see how that stops. You know, Europe can put tariffs on Chinese cars. You know, they're already not allowed in U.S. and Canada. And Earl, you have to stay on mute when I'm talking.
Oops, that was an accident. Please don't punish me.
Okay. So, but what I did kind of see that Chinese automakers are having a difficult time in Southeast Asia. Maybe because of demand. I don't know. Maybe because of you know, the rest of the world is not doing well economically. So, but if you look at how BYD and Xiaomi cars are positioned against Teslas in China, I mean, we're talking better cars for half the price. So, for example, Model Y. Okay. YU7 is larger in size with slightly longer length, about the same width, slightly wider, but about the same. And height is also about the same. So it's still a little longer, so a bit more leg room, I think, as I understand it, which is important in China. And that performance-wise, you know, really the only trim in China that matters is rear-wheel drive. That's like 80-90% of sales, according to Troy, of Tesla vehicles in China, rear-wheel drive. So nobody really wants to pay up for a second motor in China. Model Y has about 300 horsepower, 220 kilowatts, 5.9 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. And the YU7 is a stronger motor, 235 kilowatts, so 315 horsepower, so 5% more horsepower. I mean, it's not a material difference, but to the extent, you know, it just kind of says they're slightly better, these vehicles. And then the range is really where YU7 and SU7 shine. So the range, what I'm understanding is that SU7, which is the sedan, YU7, which is the SUV, are positioned in a battery size-wise between the Model 3Y and Model S and X. So it's just about quality-wise, Model 3 and Y, okay? The range on the YU7 is 725 to 820 kilometers on the CLTC cycle. Okay, so we're talking like 400 to 500 miles, and that's Model S, Model X type of range. But this is CLTC. But still, when you look at the rear-wheel drive of Model Y, which is again the only one that matters, 368 miles. So 10 to 20% more range, more power, more legroom, and it starts at a lower price. So $34,500 anticipated price that's supposed to start in June, July, as opposed to $36,000 for the Model Y. And the long range is 42,000 for Model Y. So better on all fronts at a cheaper price. And on top of that, as Jimmy talked about yesterday, Jimmy the Other talked about yesterday, Xiaomi cars integrate with the phones much better. Obviously Tesla doesn't have a phone. Apple doesn't have a car. Apple has Apple Car that kind of installs in other manufacturers, but it's not like still a clunky. It's not as good as some other options. So I can see how that being a value driver for Chinese buyers as well. So that was a really great point by Jimmy yesterday. So I just don't see how the Xiaomi YU7 doesn't kill Model Y in China. And SU7, the sedan, caught up and exceeded Model 3 sales in a matter of 2 quarters. So they ramped production extremely fast, but 2 to 3 times faster than Tesla has ever done, let alone the disastrous Cybertruck production ramp. And so YU7, now given the benefit of SU7 meeting up to expectations and exceeding them, I think YU7, all this hype around social media, YouTube videos comparing to Model Y is already killing Model Y demand in China. So just 1 month after delivery started, Tesla has reduced the wait times for the Model Y in China to a matter of a couple of weeks, which has never happened in any Tesla product in any geography. That has never happened in the last 15 years of Tesla history. So that is stunning. I don't think this is appreciated by the markets at all at this time. I don't know. Earl, anything to add? Or Lucia, anything to add here?
No, I mean, I just like I said today, I just didn't know. I didn't know. So it seems potentially bad for Tesla.
But at the same time, you're not selling your stock. So, to the extent that you think it may be bad and everything, the actions speak louder for words. I appreciate you being here, obviously, and I appreciate your words, but your actions are banging, and you're not selling. So, I think
Bad investor.
I'm not saying that. In that sense, you represent a lot of Tesla bulls, and maybe you're right. Maybe FSD will come around and override all of these, the things I discussed. Who knows? But according to ChatGPT, I said, "What about autonomy?" And I'm going to skip a bunch of stuff. In conclusion, both the Tesla Model Y and Xiaomi YU7 are set to offer advanced driver assistance features in China. Tesla's Model Y provides a well-established system with basic autopilot standard and an optional FSD package, though the full capabilities of FSD are not yet available in China. The Xiaomi YU7 aims to introduce a robust autonomous driving system, leveraging LiDAR technology for enhanced functionality, but detailed information about its features and pricing still pending. Prospective buyers should consider these factors. This is the source of CNEV post in February 23, 2025. So both the Xiaomi and BYD are basing their autonomous systems on LiDAR technology, which means higher cost for them, So maybe lower margins, etc. But that's not, from a Tesla investor's perspective, we don't care about that. We don't care about their margins. As long as they're positive, that means it's sustainable. And BYD's margins are positive, actually even higher than Tesla's. And they are sustainable, and they will cap Tesla's pricing power in the future. That's really all I care about here. All right. Let's bring in Christina if she wants to talk. But we got to switch to we need to switch to macro in a little bit. I guess Christina couldn't join. Some connection issues. Okay, thank you very much, Earl. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Let's read this real quick. There's a lot going on the macro front. A lot going on here. I do think there will be a deal. I think this tariff war stuff is just nonsense. And it's just kind of all talk, no bite. There's no way the economy will be able to handle a material rise in tariffs. Jimmy, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Anything specific you want to talk about today, or can I just do my thing?
Sorry, do you mind repeating that?
Okay, so I'm going to read this article real quick. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
It's a summary article for the daily. Thank you very much. Stay on mute, everybody. Actually, I can do that right now. Here we go. How about that? Wall Street edges higher after services sector data. Tariffs in focus. Yeah, we have some ISM data that we're going to discuss here. Wall Street's main indices edged up on Wednesday after better than expected services data allied worries of a slowdown in the U.S. economy, while investors awaited a potential softer approach from President Trump on trade policy. An ISM survey showed the services sector activity, which makes up a large part of the economy, stood in expansion territory at 53.5, higher than expectations of 52.6. But a spike in the price of services inputs tempered optimism. Investors are also closely monitoring the latest developments on tariffs. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said in an interview that Trump was considering granting some relief on imported items such as cars and other parts that comply with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. The remarks came after Trump escalated the global trade war on Tuesday as he imposed 25% tariffs on top trade partners, Canada and Mexico, citing ineffective border controls. The tariff announcement is expected later in the day. Brent Shute, CIO of Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management Company, said investors were trying to gauge the extent to which Trump will go before softening his tone on tariff policy. Fed is also slated to unveil its beige book at 2 p.m. Eastern, which will throw light on the impact tariff uncertainty has had on the world's largest economy. Traders now see the central bank lowering borrowing costs for the first time this year in June, according to data compiled by LSEG. Okay. Investors have sold riskier equities over the past few weeks on fears that Trump's trade policies would amplify inflation pressures, slow the economy, and eat into corporate profits at a time when multiple reports have suggested a cooling economy. S&P has fallen over 6% from its record high, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped over 9% from its peak. Chipmaker Intel dropped 2% following Trump's remarks that lawmakers should get rid of a law offering subsidies to the semiconductor industry. CrowdStrike fell 11% after the cybersecurity firm forecast first quarter revenue slightly below estimates. Huntington rose 10% after Trump said his industry will create an office of shipbuilding, etc. So CrowdStrike, and then there's one more that they didn't include in this article is the Abercrombie and Fitch is signaling a bit of a. I'm going to take that note here. Just give me 1 second. I don't think CrowdStrike is a big deal, but Abercrombie and Fitch dropping could be a big deal. You know, Jimmy, I have a question for you, and I'm going to unmute everybody here. The question for you is: do you think the sharp slowdown in retail sales earlier this year is a result of weather impacts, or there's something else going on?
The slowdown in sales of like products, or are you saying products and services? Are you referring to only products in the data for like Best Buy and things like that for retail companies?
Well, the retail sales data in general. So, it could have some services in there, some products, some merchandise, etc. The general sense that the economy slowed down a little bit in January, February. We've seen GDP now forecasting negative growth for Q1. Do you think that's a result of weather, colder weather?
I think you have to go back to 2014 to find the weather actually impacting a drop in sales, especially with people buying things on Amazon and so forth. There's no evidence that there was a drop because of the weather, yet there was still a drop in Amazon product sales. So that would be an indicator. Secondly, if you look at the data for the last 4 months, a number of retailers have seen pretty strong sales declines for gifts, for luxury products. I think if you go back 6 months, a number of the luxury brands like Louis Vuitton and others did also have a sales forecast of a decline for the next few years. And it was also impacted by the Chinese market, but especially the American market. So I think it goes back to what I said yesterday. People are expecting a recession. They are trying to buy less. And it's one of the reasons why Trump wants credit cards to be capped is there is evidence from household debt that there is a decrease in credit card debt for the last 6 months. That would be another indicator.
Increase or decrease? Is that what you said? Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. It's currently a decrease, and it's not because of the weather. If it was because of the weather, why did Amazon also have decreasing sales? I mean, unless Amazon's impacted by the weather somehow.
I'm not sure if Amazon had a decrease in sales. Where are you getting your data? What data specifically are you referring to here?
I'll post some links. How about that?
Amazon December 2024 was up 10% revenue over last quarter. I mean, last year, the same period. Amazon's been growing 10 years, 10%. Let's see. Amazon Q1 guidance. Amazon has projected its net sales for the first quarter of 2025 to be between 151 billion and 155.5, indicating a year-over-year growth of 5 to 9%. So, I mean, I guess there's a bit of a drop year-over-year rate, but to the extent that they may beat it afterwards. This forecast accounts for an anticipated unfavorable foreign exchange impact of approximately 150 basis points. So there you go. Additionally, the company noted that the first quarter of 2024 benefited from an extra day due to leap year, which contributed approximately 1.5 billion. Yeah, I mean, that explains the difference here. So there's no slowdown in Amazon's growth rate here. Operating income for Q1 2025 expected to be in the range of 14 to 18 billion compared to 15.3 billion in the same quarter of the previous year. This guidance has fallen short of analyst expectations, who had projected revenues around 158 billion. So miss versus expected. The conservative outlook has raised concerns about the potential slowdown in Amazon's growth momentum heading into the year. Okay. Despite these projections, Amazon continues to invest heavily in tech infrastructure, particularly AWS and AI initiatives, including development of custom chips like Trainium 2, while these investments position the company for long-term growth. They may pressure free cash flow and margins in the near term. Okay. I mean, that's a very minor slowdown on Amazon. Let me look at Walmart. Walmart Q1 2012. Jimmy, anything to add on what I just read?
I think we need to. Do you mind if we talk about immigration and how it affects growth and inflation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, essentially, we've had a much larger population in the United States than before. Um, Now there's a policy for many countries in the West to tighten immigration policy. Give you an example, the UK is now instituting, it's very strange, they go back and forth on this, a new set of visa rules. Before, you would go to the UK, do a postgraduate degree, you would get a work visa. Today, it's not automatic anymore. You have to apply and pay £3,000 for the additional work visa. Before it was automatic. So that'd be a small example. They're trying to tighten not just the legal immigration, obviously the illegal immigration. There is an expected 6.4% decline in the working age population in Europe by 2040. So it's not that far away. And a number of countries are facing this really difficult decision. If you raise the effective retirement age by 1 year, some might even argue 2 years, and the closing of the gap in the male-female labor force continues, how much would that add to the baseline GDP? And some people basically say, considering most of these countries have flatlining GDP growth, at most it would add 1%, maybe 2%. But we have to admit something. Migration, both legal and illegal, has an important economic driver for a lot of countries when it comes to GDP growth, especially since the domestic working age population has decreased. So countries like Australia, Canada, New Zealand have tried to offset their projected population declines with an increase in high immigration. But while immigration does boost capital expenditures over time, the growing population of immigrants requires capex, more housing, roads. They need subsidized tools of transport, like cars and so forth. And then infrastructure development has to be planned in tandem with the population growth as it ramps up. So a lot of countries are also facing housing crises. Ireland, the UK, the list would go on. As capital expenditure tries to catch up, but due to regulations and unions and the lack of funding, they're not able to build that housing. So it creates an inflation pressure. And in the US, it's one of the reasons why there was that inflation pressure is even though we have more ability to scale, ramp up housing, as a small example, the working age migrants do boost the potential for growth. They also do lower wages, and they do keep inflation in check. So the United States is kind of able to manage this. In contrast, other countries, especially in Europe, Australia, Canada, other places, unless they can ramp up housing, unless they can do other things to basically offer the capex on a state-by-state basis, it's going to be very difficult because higher demand without an increased labor supply, it's going to lead to a lot of problems, especially inflationary pressure, but a lack of jobs for young people. And so we have to be aware of this. Right now, there's a lot of evidence that the places with the largest net migration outflows, the Philippines, Mexico, and Poland, are also the countries that have the highest rates of GDP growth. So we have to, balance it with that. Why is it that countries that see a net outflow are experiencing higher GDP growth rates than countries that are now experiencing the highest net inflow? I think that's something that we need to admit to ourselves. Maybe migration does have a big effect on the inflation numbers, and it's something that is very delayed. That is also one of the reasons why I'm sure you've heard Japan is experiencing inflation for one of the first times in decades. And the government is really unable to explain why this is happening. Today, Japan is the oldest country with a median age of like 50. I think it's 49 or something like that. And it's relaxed visa restrictions for the first time to attract foreign workers. It's tried foreign worker programs. It's trying to relieve labor shortages by offering high-skilled visas. It's not the only one. A lot of countries are doing this. And yet they are surprised that as these migrants come into the country, there are inflation pressures. What will be the long-term impact of this on potential stagflation? Because countries that have net migration outflows don't have any incentive to stop that from happening. And the countries that have the net migration inflows, a lot of the data that shows it's adding to inflation, the general public doesn't really seem to care that much. If they did, they would vote accordingly. I think it has a much bigger impact on inflation than people say. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia?
Yeah, just a counterpoint. By 2040, autonomy and AI will supplement the GDP, and there is not gonna be a manpower problem.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jimmy. I'm gonna have to restart these AI summaries of these spaces. It's hard for me to keep up with all the knowledge shared and host a space at the same time. So I'll publish the Patreon kicked me out because I didn't delete a tweet. How fucked up is that? How fucked up is that? Talk about
Very
free
fucked up.
speech. Talk about free speech. What a joke. And I didn't do anything illegal or against the terms and conditions of anybody. So fuck that, dumbasses. So I'm gonna do that on subscriptions for X, but it's more for my purposes anyway, so it doesn't matter. Jimmy?
If I'm allowed to, even though he just left, I would like to respond to his argument that humanoid robots will have a big impact on inflation, as essentially replaces the need for net migration. If I'm allowed to, otherwise,
Yeah, Jimmy.
I
But
would
when do you expect humanoid robots in Amazon factories?
That's a good question. They have a few contracts to Atlas, I'm sure you're aware of. Those are not really fully humanoid. First off, what will the cost be for Amazon to accept a large rollout of humanoid robots? Right now, Atlas is predicting that the cost of their robots will reach $300,000 by 2028. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of workers. It's a lot of wages in one robot. If they roll out millions, the cost could go down to the tens of thousands. So what are people like Luce trying to say here? It's an enabler. It's going to allow for companies to be more optimistic, and it will have a huge impact on the wages they would potentially pay out, their operating costs, billions of dollars. Amazon, if you look at their number of employees, half of employees are assigned to warehouses. So if you could replace 10 to 20% of those employees with robots, it would make sense. That would mean that the robot would have to cost equivalent to the employee between $50,000 to $60,000 per unit, not including maintenance. How many robots would Atlas have to roll out? How much would the actual operating cost of those robots be? My projections are those rollouts will first begin not at Amazon, but in the construction industry and in farming, followed by fishing, forestry, and then warehousing. Warehousing has showed
Talk about
that
when?
when 2035.
Yeah, I think it's 2030s too.
Okay. Do you think there's issues with vision, especially adding computer vision to replicate a lot of the tasks that human employees are doing right now? Some of these tasks are very complex, not just working conveyor belt systems, but sorting. It's actually a little bit more complex than people imagine. Have you ever visited an Amazon warehouse by any chance?
No. Yeah, I think I think there are issues with reliability. That's really the issue. Thank you, Jimmy. Your sound quality is a little low today. Gives a lot of static coming when you're talking. I think reliability is a big deal. Without reliability being nearly perfect, if not perfect, I don't think humanoids or robotaxis can gain agency. And without agency, now what the fuck what do I need you for? It's like, imagine you've hired an analyst and you have to fucking monitor every single keystroke on the Excel spreadsheet. I don't need that analyst then if I'm already spending time doing it. Like if I'm in the car, in the driver's seat and supervising you and you're not freeing up any of my time, then what do I need you for? And I'm not going to pay you, let alone pay you anything above what it costs, the marginal cost. So, and that's what we're seeing today. And so the question is, when does the reliability get to a level where this analyst can do the work and I don't need to be in the office? I can be out golfing. And we're not there. I mean, even with LLMs, which is an easier problem to solve, I think, than driving. Even with that, we have an issue with, it just doesn't do the job well. It doesn't do the job well enough. It kind of makes issues and it's confidently wrong, which is like horrible. Like you can't be wrong, but at least tell me your confidence level is not very high. It's kind of like saying Tesla will triple in 2022, blasting it everywhere in every reply for months and months, for a year, and then it not happening, which obviously is not a good outcome. So more work needed. There's going to be years and years of improvement needed. And honestly, I don't think it's just a scale problem either. I don't think it's a matter of like just getting 100 to 1,000 times more compute and all of a sudden it's solved. I think it's more around you really need to solve 0 to 1 type of problems because you can't invest like trillions of dollars, tens of trillions of dollars into more compute. That's just ridiculous. And even if you could do that, let's say, for example, Google, Microsoft, etc., just made a wrong decision. And they said, we are going to buy all these tens of trillions of dollars of compute. We're going to raise cash. Let's say you can't do that today in today's interest rate environment. We're going to raise cash and give it all to Jensen. And Jensen all of a sudden is able to get procured from TSMC. Even in that case, you don't have the electricity. You don't have the electric source. So without electricity, without the power, so there's a lot of issues with that kind of mindset that Masa is trying to push on people, or Sam Altman is trying to push on people. So I don't see it happening. And I think Microsoft just woke up to that fact, I guess, and they pulled the plug on OpenAI. And yeah, Jimmy?
Well, there's two components we can talk about. One is energy needs. I've seen reports that generative AI's demands by 2027 will require the equivalent of Spain's entire energy needs for 2022. So we're going to need a lot of energy. And in order to ramp up to an additional 100 gigawatts of energy would basically require having nuclear. So in contrast, today, the U.S. is only projected to add 10.5 gigawatts of new capacity, roughly compared to the 300 gigawatts capacity we would need by 2050, which is going to meet our COP28 pledge. So where would that come from? It's nuclear. Who are the countries actually building nuclear? It's not the United States. What countries are actually using small modular reactors that work with base load? It's not the United States. It's China, Russia, Japan. There's currently 80 different commercial SMR designs being developed worldwide, and very few of them are being developed in the United States. The potential is quite large, but as you said, we need more energy capacity. So that means the grids, that means more water actually as well. For a lot of the data centers, people forget that. It means the base load needs to be worked on. It needs more storage, more energy storage too. I'm sure you're aware of that. So unless we're going for only SMRs, the way that nuclear reactors work in terms of baseload is they produce a lot of energy. You can't really slow it down. So all the excess energy needs to be stored. It needs to be stored, and it also needs to be cooled down. So we can't really have these in drought-prone regions. So basically, a large portion of the United States is currently quite drought-prone. So there's a lot of problems that people don't talk about. To give you an example of the way that we project how important and successful we will be with this, yet with no evidence, this new program for constructing, more shipping. The United States only produces 1% of shipping right now. We used to produce 90% in 1945. It's ridiculous. Who's going to buy it? Yet in nuclear power, we have enough demand. We do. But the regulations make it difficult. The issue, of course, is who wants to live near a nuclear power plant. So there's going to be a lot of lawsuits. And the costs. Who will fund them? Will banks go out and fund these? What about SMRs? Well, it's the same problems. And yet, by 2035, when Russia is using 50 SMRs, is what they're projecting, China will use hundreds of SMRs. Is that going to be time we admit our energy policy was incorrect and look at them? I'm worried that we won't even admit that to ourselves. We've seen these countries be incredibly successful with a lot of technology, from energy storage, new smart energy grid, high-speed rail, and yet we're not taking any of those lessons, even EVs. So yeah, as you say, without the energy capacity, I don't even see how the AI revolution will lead to humanoid robots as well, also being part of the workforce. I want to add something very important. You kind of brush off the construction industry being the very first test bed for humanoid robots. Wouldn't it make sense to have humanoid robots in industries which are the most dangerous and have the most OSHA requirements? There are workplace accidents in construction. It reduces work time. I'm sure if you've ever been at a union, you know that stoppages occur. A lot of work is extremely dangerous and traditionally was done often either by low-skilled labor, which has been harder because the machinery requires higher-skilled workers, or we just ignored it until OSHA was created. And there were plenty of workplace deaths, but due to lawsuits and union problems, that means concrete doesn't get fed. That means that certain kinds of stacking for rebar doesn't get made. It can take years for adding basically foundation plants into the bedrock because of how dangerous it can be. Humanoid robots would be able to get into the foundation and add the rebar, and no one would worry if they were covered by concrete and be smothered to death. Would be able to scale and work basically in a high capacity to connect cranes together to the actual staging machines. I mean, you know how many people died making the Empire State Building? By any chance? 5 people died.
Okay.
5, yeah, 5.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. All right. So you said that I'm going to do a little bit more macro. So you said on okay. All right. Just give me 2 seconds. Thank you. All right. Walmart Q1 guidance in its first quarter of fiscal 2025, ending April 30th. Walmart reported strong. No, that's not what I want. That is not what I want. See, this is like stupid LLMs. This is ridiculous. That's so dumb. Like, why the fuck would I be asking? Walmart has provided guidance for the first quarter of fiscal 2026, anticipating net sales growth of 3 to 4% and adjusted earnings per share between 57 cents to 58 cents. This projection is slightly below analyst expectations, which had anticipated higher figures. Company's conservative outlook has raised concerns about consumer spending trends. Walmart has provided guidance for the first quarter of fiscal 2026, anticipating net sales growth increase of 3 to 4% adjusted. So just caution approach. Okay. So that gives us Walmart, Target, A&F, and numerous others. Especially on retail, guiding for lower in Q1. So if it was just weather, I don't see how that would be true. It doesn't make sense if it was just weather. Jimmy? Jimmy, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Jimmy.
No, you muted. It was muted. All right. I would like to add a few points to that. First off, have you seen the rise in debt? And in a high interest rate environment, it makes it difficult to spend. So I would like to add about private debt right now. Private credit market is growing pretty fast.
It's a small market still. Do you
1.5
think
trillion?
Well, the global debt market is tens of trillions of dollars, right? So it's still less than 1%. I mean, less than 10%. And do you think the declining auto loan rates, how do you think that's going to impact Model Y sales in 2025? What do you expect for Tesla's Model Y? What do you expect for Tesla sales this year versus last year?
Yeah, I'm expecting massively lower sales. All the evidence, even that came out recently about its sales in Germany, have just it's horrible. Even of course they're doing very low APR financing, but it's irrelevant. It's not relevant whatsoever. People
Why?
just don't want it. Because people don't want the car, Yaman. They don't want the car.
Yeah. So I'm going to argue the other side. Okay, so people don't want the car. You're saying. The other side would say, so this is the bull thesis, would say, the new Model Y is coming. So Tesla had to clear out inventory, change production lines across the world at the same time, China, Germany, and US for the new Model Y. So there's obviously going to be some level of Osborne effect as well on top of that. So how do you know that? Because people don't want the car.
How do we know that people don't want the car when other car companies have increasing sales?
How do you know that the Q1 sales plunge across the world for Model Y specifically and other vehicles as well is not due to this changeover to the new Model Y? Why do you say it's that people don't want the car as opposed to more of a supply side issue? How do you know it's a demand issue versus a supply side issue?
So 223,000 in inventory by the end of 2024, and 41 days of inventory, right? These were old models. They want to clear it out, correct? So they try to offer all these incentives to clear out the inventory in the last quarter of 2024 in China. It didn't really work out. I think that alone shows, because even though sales did plunge for most companies, if it's consistently plunging, despite increasing incentives, and in China, actually, a lot of companies did pretty well last quarter and offered very similar incentives, it probably means that the Model Y needs that refresh to become competitive again. the Model Y is not a competitive model right now. I think that's very fair. It's competition's heating up in all these different markets, and I just don't think Tesla can keep
in
up with the EV.
China, yes. Chinese automakers are exporting into Europe, but that's going to be limited, I think, by the European government. In the US, they're not a player. Canada, they're not a player, but Canada doesn't want Teslas. I guess that just leaves US for Tesla sales growth.
Tesla sales plunged 59% to the lowest level in years. Sales slumped in France.
Okay, but I just explained that it could be a supply side issue as well. All right, thank you, Jimmy. I'm gonna do my own thing here. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming up again today. Always very informative. Let's do some macro stuff here, and then we're gonna call it a day. Stocks are extending gains to up 1%. US suspends deportation flights using military aircraft, the defense officials say. Military aircraft to transport some migrants has been expensive and inefficient, Wall Street Journal has reported. Okay. Call between Trump and Trudeau lasts about 50 minutes. Canadian source directly familiar with the conversation. Okay. US driving hit new record in 2024, rising 1% to nearly 3.3 trillion miles. Okay. Volkswagen unveils affordable EV model to go on sale from 2027. All right. We talked about ISM. Prices paid surged to 62.6 versus 60 expected. So that's a big, I think that's one reason inflation is going to stay higher. I don't think these kind of like 3 cuts expected this year is a little unreasonable, I think. Price paid PMI, services PMI price paid is highest. It's kind of elevated except for the 2021, 2022 years. Even higher than 2019, as high as 2018 levels. Okay. Which is, I think, the last time we had this tariff stuff going on around 2018, 2019. And then before that, it was 2011, higher than that. Okay. True inflation shows inflation declining. NASDAQ 100 closed above its 200-day average. Okay. I think markets are getting a second wind because of these Trudeau-Trump talks, expecting some sort of deal. Meta AI is now the most used AI assistant on a monthly basis. The company has 700 million monthly users. I mean, they're pushing it really hard. Which I don't use it, but we talked about car exports from China. U.S. recession, according to Polymarket, probability has increased to 39%. Let me see if there's anything else I want to talk about. German bonds and worst day since 1990 with 10-year yields up 30 basis points in one day. Interesting. Zelensky says he expects positive results from cooperation with the U.S. next week. Best Buy CEO says, based on our early analysis, if the China tariffs that went into effect on February 4th remain at 10% level for the full year, we believe they would have a negative impact in the ballpark of 1 point of comparable sales. Trump administration plans to cut 80,000 employees from Veteran Affairs. Yeah, today, by the way, the other data point that came out this morning is the ADP report was significantly lower than expected, and it was driven by education and healthcare services. And that could be because of the federal spending cuts and freezes and uncertainty. This is a private number. ADP is a private payrolls number, but federal spending does support private hiring. So there is a surge in Model 3. I think Model 3 sales are really plunging here. And I think we're going to see a material decline in Model Y used prices in the coming months as the new Model Y ramps. So one example of that is at the top of your screens is a listing of a 2021 Model Y, 2021 Model Y standard range with high mileage, but this is the lowest Model Y price I've ever seen, $11,000 for a Model Y, and the new Model Y sales haven't even started yet. So when those sales start, we're going to start seeing returns, obviously, of the old Model Y, and the supply of Model Y in the used car market will surge, just like it happened in Model 3 last year. And we're going to see less than $10,000 Model Ys selling in the used car market. Only a couple of year-old Model Ys. So these are like, hardware 4 Model Ys selling for less than $10,000 later this year. And, I think that's going to keep a lid on Model Y sales. ADP payrolls showed employment rose 77,000 in February, well below the consensus estimate of 140,000, with a 3-month moving average of 141,000. Service producing sectors added 36,000, while goods producing sectors added 42. Small firms shed 12,000 jobs during the month. Okay. There's some clear impact on hiring, purchasing plans, prices paid, imports because of tariffs, consumer sentiment, capex plans. Tariff talks, headlines are really impacting the economy. No data about that. Mortgage rates fell last week to a 2-month low, although no material increase in purchasing activity just yet. We'll see if that changes. Navarro says Trump was right. There was some tariff disturbance. Trudeau should tone it down, blah, blah. Mexico president, we will reach out to Canada and other countries after U.S. imposition of tariffs. Nucci says Republicans need to raise the debt ceiling. Okay. Part of the reason why we're seeing the yields plunge in the last few weeks here is due to the Treasury just can't borrow with the debt ceiling where it is right now. So after the debt ceiling is raised, we could see a rise in yields again. January factory orders are up, although I don't know what that means. Like, I don't think that's too material. The falling international oil price continues today, with Brent joining WTI in trading below 70. So the oil prices have really plunged here in the last few weeks after the OPEC, in the last few days after the OPEC announced they would be increasing supply. So that's not very unexpected here. Nutrient says personal will invest in crypto. In stark contrast to manufacturing data, US ISM services rose 52.8 in January to 53.5 in February, higher than the consensus forecast. Inflation front, price paid rose 2.2 percentage points to 62.6, a level last seen in early 2023, and the third month in a row of a 60-plus reading. Yeah, I mean, this is really just companies accelerating purchases here ahead of tariffs. Crazy. Euro extends gains versus US dollar. Okay. Inflation to persist above 2% into 2027 or later. Interesting. According to NABE. Interesting. Supreme Court rejects Trump on US aid, foreign aid freeze. Interesting. Apple introduces new MacBook Air with soaring performance of M4. Okay. NVIDIA CEO Jensen and industry visionaries to unveil what's next in AI at GTC 2025. There was a T Rowe Price portfolio manager today on CNBC talking about how it's a good time to buy T Rowe. I mean, it's a good time to buy Nvidia stock. But I looked at some underlying data, and he's selling himself, which is kind of crazy. That these interviews on CNBC, people are just like pumping and dumping, and it's not just ARK Invest. T Rowe does it too, apparently, which is a little surprising to me. The U.S. cut off intelligence to Ukraine. Leisure and hospitality added 41,000 jobs, according to ADP in February. So that's interesting too. Baby boomers really keep this inflation going, services inflation going. And in the meantime, millennials are just really getting hurt. A younger generation are really getting hurt here. All right, that's it. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'll chat with you all next time. Take care. Are just really getting hurt. A younger generation are really getting hurt here.